Hi, I'm Teresa Chang.
Hi, I'm Felicia Grant Cummings.
Hi, I'm Kim Johnson with Moms Navigating Autism.
Which do you prefer? Disability or different ability?
Different ability, I think.
Yeah, I prefer different abilities. And my reason is at the beginning, yes, it was a disability, it wasn't well known. And now, with 136 kids being born with autism, um, I think that the people with autism are going to outnumber um, in the near future because there's more and more being born with autism. Um, so it slowly has become a different ability.
I said I was on the fence because I didn't really have an opinion, different ability, or disability. But then when I hear you both saying different ability, it's also because your children are higher functioning, so they're not as a disability. So maybe that's why I look at it a little differently. Not that I want to say, oh, my son is disabled, but now that I'm hearing you both say it, maybe now that's why. Not that I still have I don't have an opinion either way, but that what I'm saying is then, I could see where you would want different ability because high functioning and then disability, lower functioning. It's more of a disability. So
I see what you're saying.
you know what I'm saying? Like I didn't think about it before.
I see what you're saying too.
But now I'm hearing it differently. So different ability is okay. Individuals with autism that can advocate and speak for themselves may feel, hey, I don't have a disability. I have a different ability. Like when you hear people speak on the topic,
it's all the lens in which you're looking through.
Yeah.
Right. No,
half full or half empty. Yeah.
When I was down at the United Nations for World Autism Day, I had met a young man who was nonverbal. He was nonverbal for most of his life, and they actually discovered that he had the ability to talk through an iPad. So he types in everything and the iPad voice comes out. I want to say it's Siri, but I think he's switched it to a male voice. And I think he was, because it was a question that was posed to them, and he said, being the person that experienced both sides, because now that he's able to communicate, he's already gotten his master's degree, and he said that he considered it a disability because he was being prevented from voicing his thoughts or how he feels and communicating. And when he was like that, he felt it was a disability. But now that he's able to voice his opinions and his thoughts and communicate, he now feels that it's a different ability. So it goes to what you were saying.
Yeah, different lens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking through a different lens. And it all depends. So there really is no blanket term, It really depends on the lens in which you're looking through. There is no blanket term. It depends on the person and what abilities they have or do not have. And, that's what it is. It's really subjective too.
And even
individual. And
that's
for the individual, that's not a bad thing.
But some individuals may not see themselves as having any disability and be on the spectrum. They define themselves as not having any limitations or any. Oh, I'm not disabled. I have autism, but look I can go to college and I can get a degree and I could do this, this, and this, and they don't look at it as either even. So.
And you have a lot of people that are our age or older that
were diagnosed.
were never diagnosed. And if you look at them, today you notice some things. I mean, we're not
It's
doctors,
quirkiness.
right? We notice things, right? Exactly.
Right, right. That's a good, yeah, it is. It's quirkiness. And you know what? Because they weren't diagnosed and maybe they didn't get some services or some interventions, they develop their own coping mechanisms and their own strategies and skills innately. And, it helped them to overcome a lot of obstacles because they overcame, by
Right.
just coping skills and strategies that they found that worked for them. Um,
Right. Right.
so that, you know, maybe alleviated some of what were the typical symptoms or the typical behaviors that some others may on the outside may have been looking at. And if you would, it helped them to be or look or appear more neurotypical.
Exactly. Exactly. In fact, they grew up thinking they did not have a disability. They grew up
Right.
thinking that the way they are is the way everybody is. Oh, so we want to know, what are your thoughts? So comment down below and let us know whether you think it's a disability or a different ability. Disability or bad behavior.
That's the lens of the person looking too, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what some person views as bad behavior, we as parents of children, young adults who have challenges, we know what we're trying to help them manage, and somebody else on the outside may have no clue. No
That's
clue.
right. That is what we, autism families, they're the only ones that know. Or families of children with special needs, they're the only ones that know.
I mean, a
Having
2-year-old has a temper tantrum in the middle of a store, laying on the floor, banging his head. Not with autism. Is the child bad or just having a meltdown where they can't regulate? So, I mean, is it really bad behavior or just a tantrum in a 2-year-old? I mean, a
right.
child with autism up to any age almost can have a meltdown,
Mhm.
Their extreme is to an older age sometimes. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Well, I've seen some kids, you know, pre having a child. You look at kids and you have no idea what and you look at kids and you're like, oh my gosh. I never really said anything, but I would think to myself, oh my gosh. And then I had a child and he was on the spectrum, and we would go through this, and I would think to myself, God, now I see, now I really see. Um,
It teaches you
but
a lot of empathy for others. It really
right,
does.
it does. It teaches you, I feel for them and what they go through. Because nobody knows your struggle unless you're going through the same thing.
I mean, I saw a woman in the store recently. She had a young child with her, but she was telling the child that no, we're not going to do that. We're going to get ready to go out of the store, and the kid was just looking at her and like scream on the top of their lungs, just scream. So is it really bad behavior or a young child again having a temper tantrum? So I don't, like if my son was in the store, I wouldn't have no hair left. If you heard the screaming coming out of this child was so bad, so bad. He would have been pulling my hair.
Once I was on the train And my son kept getting up, and I literally got up, picked him up, and sat him between my husband and I. And he started crying. And this man gets up and he comes over to us and tells us that we're these horrible parents and that we need to learn to control our child. And I was so mortified. I didn't know what to say. And I just didn't say anything. I remember that. And I just, after that, I wouldn't take him on the train. We would always drive down. And eventually, I mean, he was, 3 years old at the time. A couple of years later, he got on the train. He was fine. But I remember that day. I so remember that day when that man came over and he told us we were these horrible parents.
But I mean, after a while, like you said, he was young. He was only 3. After a certain time, you learn, not to say you're going to catch every meltdown or anything like that, but you learn to manage them a little bit better as time goes over. What are the triggers? Like my son is sensory and sound. A baby crying, I'll set him off. Like forget about it. He start crying, he starts pulling hair. He's gotten better, and the video player definitely helps with the sound. But again, like even in a store or a grocery store, you learn to avoid the aisle that the screaming baby's on, because it's going to trigger him. So in order for you not to have a behavior like that, I talk, I sing, I go another way, so you kind of learn to adapt and, do what works. So.
Yeah. A lot of times, now I definitely, it's a disability. We can't criticize others. We're not walking in their shoes. We don't know what's going on, so you start to think, all right, let's see what can help them. If it's somebody like I was starting to say earlier, I was in the library and I once saw his friend having a meltdown. Kid was like 9 years old. So and the mother was walking around and she would just kind of ignore it, thinking that it's going to go away. So I just kind of like bent down to his level and I just said to him, hi, you're such a good kid. You're such a good friend to my son, and I know what a good kid you are and what a wonderful person you are because I know you, but everybody else here doesn't know you. I said, and so how about we just show them what a great person you are? And he stopped crying. And, I think what I actually did was I turned the page, so, and he quieted down and he just kept walking. It's so funny.
Direction.
Yeah, in another direction. But, like other, and then they left and I get this woman saying, oh, thank God you shut that kid up. And I was like, the child has a disability. You need not be so critical of him. And that was it.
Like, I don't know, like there's maybe another thing just to bring up not bring up, but like in a situation where you have a meltdown. So Kyler was going for karate lessons and there were special needs children. They said, oh, we dealt with kids with behaviors or sound sensory, non-mobile or nonverbal. We've taught kids like this before. So, we're trying out the class. It was a small area where they had it. And then they had a couple seats for like parents to watch their kids. And it was typical kids in the class also. So there was, other families like with a baby and stuff. And there was a small area. So Kyler started having a meltdown. So there wasn't many places to take him except for outside the building, which was all cement steps. So now he's thrashing and I don't want to bring him there because now he's going to get hurt. So I try to go to a little corner in the space. So another mother from the classroom there came up to me and said, God bless you. I'm going to pray for you in church on Sunday. So how do people with special needs children that have meltdowns handle when somebody tells you that? Do you have a meltdown? Be like, what are you talking about? Do you start yelling at the person? Or I'm not a religious person. And that person said it to me not to mean anything bad. I know the heart was in the right place. I'm not religious. And I believe that her thoughts were, I'm going to pray for you. Not because, oh, I feel bad. Oh, you need somebody to pray for you. But I think the intent was in the good place, whether I'm religious or not. How do people handle a situation when somebody says that to you, even though that's not your your belief, or you're in the middle of this meltdown and now you're going to have a meltdown. I had to take it as this was coming from a good place. It wasn't meant to be like, oh, poor you, I need to pray for you and something like that. So some people might be like, who are you to, like somebody in that situation, because in the heat of everything happening might not handle it the same way, because people have
Or
said that to me before. I say
receive
thank
the message,
you and
or
I'm
receive.
good, I got this, so, and that's something once that I experienced at one of those classes. I mean, again, like the person's thought was in the right place, and it wasn't meant to be again saying, oh, keep your kid quiet,
Right.
or oh, how do you handle that, or I just had to say, okay, thank you, appreciate it, and figure out how I'm gonna get him to stop pulling hair and scratching, and not hurt anybody else that was in that area, because there was babies there too. So you know like, again, from another point of, a lot of people mean well and don't mean it in a, like she just said, Teresa, shut your kid up, oh, thank God that kid's quiet, situation. People, do have good hearts and mean well too.
Right. They
So
don't have a negative connotation, right? They don't
Yeah.
have a negative connotation. They don't have a negative thought. They're just, I think it's their way of supporting, and it's true. You, not just you, but somebody else may not receive it the way it was intended. But what can you do? You move forward.
somebody else might have taken it as an offense to, oh, what do you mean by that? Or, and multiple people have done on different occasions, not just when he was having a behavior. They said, oh, I'm going to light a candle for your son, I pray every day. Or, like, people have said that. Okay, again, I'm not a religious person, but that's what that person's belief is. So that's, they're doing it in good faith, and
And that's
the
the way they're
intent is
showing you
of good
support.
wishes. Yes. And I'm okay with that. So, I mean, again, people, it's all how they take it sometimes.
My issue with her was that she actually was upset that he was having a meltdown, and she had no idea, and she was attributing it to
Bad behavior.
bad parenting, and so it was bad behavior. um and so, and like I said, the guy who came and told us that we were bad parents and that we need to find a way, to control our child. I mean, it was very clear he was.
Maybe he was praying for you too, though.
I guess, you know what? Maybe he was. What advice would you give to other autism parents who may be struggling with feelings of isolation or overwhelm?
Hmm. I would give one piece of advice would be to find resources where you can talk to other parents who are experiencing the same, or even if you're not comfortable talking about it, even if you begin watching videos, YouTube, or other channels such as ours, um, just to get information and hear the voice of other parents. I think it is so, so helpful when you feel like you're not alone. I found I felt alone for a very long time. I felt mostly that my child, um, the challenges that we had, none of my friends had the same challenges, and it was isolating at times because they didn't have the same challenges. And not everybody's kid is going to have the same thing, but I think you know you do find comfort in knowing that somebody else is not having a perfect life. because um, none of us are perfect. Whether you have a neurotypical kid or not, your life isn't perfect. But I think the perception is that the grass is greener over there, than what your daily walk is. And so, I mean, I've always been grateful to any parent, whether their kid was neurotypical or not, and they expressed that they had challenges, whatever the challenges were. You know, I was always grateful, like, ah, amen. Somebody else has challenges, and I'm not the only one. I was always grateful for that. So I think finding community um, is community and resources are very helpful to keep you from feeling isolated and alone.
I also think that you should start looking like she said, community, looking to do things like, depending on where your child is on the spectrum, they're going to want certain things. Like mine wanted to join a baseball team, but you know, I knew in my mind that it wasn't going to be a regular one. So I found a special needs team. Get creative, go out there and find. You're going to find that you're not the only person with a child on the spectrum. There's kids on the spectrum all over the place. Find those families, find those parents, get your kids together. Most importantly, start helping them build friendships with these kids, because they need to connect somehow, and it helps them with their social skills. My son is still friends with the first people that I got him together at these communities. They were still very close. From that Challengers baseball team, the Challengers soccer team. He's still very, very close to a lot of these people. But like I say to people, you first find out, take a few weeks to feel sorry for yourself, start reading up, start going out there, start doing things with your kid. Yes, you start to feel overwhelmed because you don't understand. But once you start to understand, you start to find ways to help that child. That child's depending on you. So find ways, talk to people. There's support groups out there. There's support groups on Facebook if you can't do it in person.
Yeah. I just wanted to add another piece is that once you have the diagnosis, also, I think I found something helpful was not just to focus on where the challenges are, but also look and see where your child's strengths are. And that also helps you to feel better, because when you're always focused on what may be perceived as a problem, what may be perceived as a problem, but I'd rather say challenges, it can just be daunting when you're just thinking about all the challenges. But when you begin to think about what some of that child's strengths are, and be able to maybe enhance those strengths or support them in those strengths, whatever they may be. And it could be something small, as I don't know, that they can eat independently, whatever that is, just play those up and support those things, because when you're just focusing on the challenges, it can feel very heavy.
Well, I guess I have a different set of challenges. But you talk about the isolation. When my son was younger, I would take him to a lot of the friends' parties, family parties, whether it's a graduation, birthday party, or whatever. A lot of my friends' kids are all grown up. They're pretty much most of them, I think, are now out of school and stuff. They're going on to college and doing their own thing. And I don't want to say I feel a little selfish because, like, now if I have respite or calm have, I realize that when I go to a party and I leave him home with his ComHab worker, I'm like, oh my God, I'm having such a good time because now I could walk around to talk to everybody that's there at the party. Before I would have to stay with him because if they had stairs in the house or if he was going to get up and touch something, maybe break something because he's looking to put the video on or, so it was just getting easier. Oh, I'm going to leave him home. But I feel bad because like that's leaving him home, but I can't look at it as selfishness because now you're talking about otherwise I would have isolation. He's not isolated because he goes to day hab every day. So he has his routine of getting on the bus with the people he goes to program with. He eats with his group in the class and he sees his peers every day. But we also do separate things. So like we still do the apple picking or go bowling or if we were with the family, the internal family that's used to him and knows him, and we kind of do our own little party and hang out kind of thing. So he still does have some of that stuff. But again, otherwise, like you said, the topic was isolation. It was kind of like everybody else is doing other things that he can't do. So a lot of them would get together and do things that their kids would go, whether it was the amusement parks or all these trips or camping. We couldn't do any of that. So you do kind of, I don't want to say I feel the isolation. You just kind of adapt and do what you can do. But again, like now that he's older and I am leaving him with like a ComHab respite worker, I'm at least getting some of that time to myself now when I go to like a friend's house, like if there's a graduation or I could actually enjoy myself. And I hate to say I can enjoy myself without him there because that sounds horrible. But that's the kind of break. It's not like every weekend, every day or anything like that. But we still do things together and have his own thing, whether it's go out and have lunch or, hang out by the park or take a ride. We still do those things like up to the Bear Mountain Zoo. Even if it's just the two of us, we still do those things. So it's not like it just looks different than the average person, I guess is what I'm saying. It's just, again, I can have mommy time and then we can have time together.